Nestled deep in the heart of the countryside, surrounded by endless fields of golden wheat, lay the isolated Miller Farm. For years, it had stood as a testament to the passing of time, its rustic charm and tranquil landscapes capturing the hearts of many who ventured near. It was, for all intents and purposes, the idyllic rural haven that city dwellers could only dream of escaping to. However, on this particular summer evening, an ominous cloud loomed over the Miller Farm. It was the eve of the annual harvest, a day that had been anticipated with both excitement and dread by the residents of the nearby town. The townsfolk whispered tales of the Miller family's peculiar traditions, strange rituals performed under darkness to ensure their bountiful crops. Though these stories were usually dismissed as mere folklore, there was an unease that settled over the village every year as the day drew near. Among those curious enough to venture to the farm was Sarah, a young woman with an insatiable appetite for the unknown. She had recently moved to the town, and the ominous rumors that swirled around the Miller farm had piqued her curiosity. As dusk descended, she found herself on the edge of the farm, hidden amongst the tall, swaying wheat. From her vantage point, Sarah watched as lanterns were lit around the Miller farmhouse, casting eerie shadows across the fields. A group of villagers had gathered, their faces etched with a mix of trepidation and anticipation. Among them was Eli Miller, the patriarch of the family, a tall and imposing figure. Eli's voice carried across the crowd as he began to speak.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have gathered here to give thanks for the blessings of the land, for the sustenance it provides us year after year.
The crowd murmured in agreement, but Sarah could sense the unease that lingered just beneath the surface. The stories of the Miller family's rituals were not easily forgotten. Eli continued.
As is our tradition, we offer a token of our gratitude, a symbol of our commitment to the land.
He gestured toward a large wooden crate at his feet. The crowd's unease grew as a group of men, all dressed in matching robes, emerged from the shadows, carrying the crate. Sarah's heart quickened as they opened it, revealing a collection of intricately carved wooden dolls, each one eerily lifelike. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she realized the dolls were representations of the townsfolk, painstakingly crafted to resemble every person in the village. Eli's voice grew solemn as he continued.
Tonight, we offer these dolls as tokens of our commitment to the land. Each doll represents a member of our community, and we place them on the altar to ensure a bountiful harvest.
With each word, one of the robed men carefully placed a doll on a makeshift altar, and the townsfolk watched in a mixture of fascination and dread. Sarah's unease deepened as she noticed the doll that bore her resemblance being placed on the altar. Eli raised his arms, his eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity.
Let the harvest begin.
As the crowd erupted in cheers, the robbed men produced small silver knives and began to cut the dolls in a grotesque mimicry of the sacrifices performed by their ancestors. The villagers watched, their faces contorted with a mixture of horror and disbelief as the dolls were mutilated one by one. Sarah couldn't tear her eyes away from the macabre spectacle. It was as if the life force was being drained from the entire village with each cut of the knife. The air grew heavy with a palpable darkness that seemed to seep into every crevice. As the last doll was desecrated, Eli raised his arms once more, his voice rising to a crescendo.
We offer our sacrifice to the land, that it may flourish and provide for us, as it always has.
A sense of foreboding hung in the air as the crowd dispersed, leaving Sarah standing alone in the wheat fields, her heart pounding. She couldn't shake the feeling that what she had witnessed was not just a peculiar tradition, but something far more sinister. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah decided to investigate further. She waited until the farmhouse was shrouded in darkness, and then she approached cautiously, keeping to the shadows. The farm seemed eerily silent, and she could hear only the soft rustling of the wheat in the breeze. Sarah crept closer to the farmhouse and peered through a window. Inside, she saw Eli Miller and the robed men gathered around a table covered with candles and herbs. They chanted in a language she couldn't understand, their voices echoing through the stillness of the night. Suddenly, the ground beneath Sarah's feet shifted, and she stumbled, falling to the ground with a gasp. In her haste, she had stepped on a loose floorboard, causing it to creak loudly. Panic welled up inside her as she realized she had been discovered. The chanting inside the farmhouse ceased, and a chilling silence descended. Then, the door swung open, and Eli Miller appeared in the doorway, his eyes locking onto Sarah's with an unsettling intensity.
"You shouldn't have come here,"
he whispered, his voice laced with a dark menace. Before Sarah could react, she felt a cold, gnarled hand on her shoulder, and she turned to find herself face to face with one of the robed men. His grip was like iron as he dragged her inside the farmhouse. Eli's eyes bore into her soul as he spoke.
"You have seen too much, and now you must become a part of our tradition, like those who came before you."
Sarah's heart raced as the realization of her fate sank in. She had stumbled upon a horror far beyond her imagination, and now she was to become a part of it. But just as despair threatened to consume her, a deafening crash echoed through the farmhouse. The walls trembled and the candles flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced across the room. The robed men released their grip on Sarah as panic overtook them. They rushed outside, leaving her alone with Eli, who looked equally unnerved. The ground outside the farmhouse continued to shake, and the walls groaned under the strain. The very earth seemed to rebel against the dark ritual that had been performed. As Sarah and Eli stared at each other in terror, a massive sinkhole opened up beneath the farmhouse, swallowing it whole. The ground crumbled, and the farmhouse was devoured by the earth, along with the robed men who had performed the ritual. Sarah watched in stunned disbelief as the Miller farm, with all its secrets and darkness, was consumed by the abyss. The ground closed up, leaving no trace of the farmhouse or its sinister inhabitants. The tremors subsided, and the eerie silence returned to the countryside. Sarah was left standing alone in the darkness, her heart still pounding from the horrors she had witnessed. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, Sarah realized that she had escaped a fate far worse than she could have imagined. The Miller farm, with its dark traditions, was gone, and the land had reclaimed its secrets. But the memory of that night would forever haunt her, a reminder that sometimes the most idyllic of places could hide the darkest of horrors, and that the unexpected twist of fate could save a life or seal a gruesome destiny. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the sprawling Jenkins Farm. The rural landscape seemed peaceful, the only sounds being the distant hum of cicadas and the lowing of cows in the fields. However, this seemingly tranquil place held a sinister secret, one that had terrorized the small town of Cedar Hollow for decades. The townsfolk whispered stories of the Jenkins family, owners of the farm for generations. They were reclusive, rarely seen in town, and their farm was a place to be avoided after dark. The ominous rumors told of a curse that had plagued the Jenkins for centuries, a curse that drove them to commit unspeakable acts. Among the curious souls drawn to the farm was Sarah, a newcomer to Cedar Hollow. She had heard the tales and could not resist the allure of the mystery that shrouded the Jenkins farm. As the twilight deepened, she found herself parked at the edge of the farm, hidden in the cover of darkness. From her vantage point, Sarah watched as a dim light flickered in the distance, a solitary lantern outside the old farmhouse. The silhouette of a man could be seen moving about, and the unease in her heart deepened. As the night wore on, Sarah saw something that made her blood run cold. A figure emerged from the shadows, clad in dark clothing and wearing a grotesque mask. In one hand, the figure held a wickedly sharp sickle, and in the other, a lantern that cast eerie dancing shadows across the farm. It was the Reaper, the legendary killer that the townsfolk spoke of in hushed tones. The Reaper was said to be a vengeful spirit, a curse brought to life by the Jenkins family's dark deeds. The figure moved with an otherworldly grace, gliding through the farm like a wraith. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the Reaper approach the farmhouse. The light of the lantern revealed the mask's twisted, leering grin, sending shivers down her spine. Inside the farmhouse, the Jenkins family slept, unaware of the imminent danger that lurked just outside. The Reaper moved silently through the house, its sickle gleaming in the dim light. One by one, the members of the family met their grisly end, their screams muffled by the mask that concealed the killer's face. Sarah could do nothing but watch in horror as the Reaper left a trail of death in its wake. The massacre was swift and brutal, and it left no room for escape or mercy. When the last of the Jenkins family had fallen, the Reaper extinguished the lantern and disappeared into the night, leaving the farm once again shrouded in darkness. Sarah waited for what felt like an eternity before summoning the courage to approach the farmhouse. The scene inside was a nightmare come to life, a blood-soaked tableau of death and despair. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood, and Sarah's stomach churned at the gruesome sight. But amid the carnage, she noticed something that sent a chill down her spine. In the corner of the room, partially obscured by a pool of blood, lay a small old journal. Sarah cautiously picked it up, her trembling hands turning the pages. The journal belonged to Samuel Jenkins, the youngest member of the family. His entries chronicled the cursed history of the farm and the dark rituals performed by his ancestors to maintain their wealth and power. It was a horrifying account of deals made with evil forces, sacrifices, and the relentless pursuit of immortality. As Sarah delved deeper into the journal, she discovered a shocking revelation, a prophecy foretelling the arrival of the Reaper, a being born of the family's sins, destined to exact a terrible vengeance upon them. The Reaper's arrival was said to be the harbinger of the family's downfall, a punishment for their wicked deeds. Sarah's heart raced as she realized the truth. The Reaper was not a malevolent killer, but a force of retribution, a supernatural entity that had come to cleanse the farm of its curse. As she closed the journal, a sound echoed from the darkness outside, a low, mournful wail that sent a shiver down her spine. Sarah rushed to the window and saw the Reaper standing at the edge of the farm, its lantern casting an eerie glow on the mask's twisted visage. The Reaper turned and began to walk away, disappearing into the night. Sarah knew that it was time to leave the farm, to leave behind the horror that had unfolded. But as she made her way back to her car, a sense of unease settled upon her. The town of Cedar Hollow would never know the truth of what had happened on the Jenkins farm that night. To them, the Reaper would remain a fearsome legend, a mysterious killer. As she drove away, Sarah couldn't help but wonder about the unexpected twist of fate that had spared her life. The Reaper had come to the farm seeking vengeance, but in the end, it had spared the one person who had uncovered the family's dark secrets. Elijah Monroe had spent the better part of his 80 years working the land of his family's farm. The Monroe Farm, nestled in the heart of the countryside, was a place that had seen generations of hard work and toil. But it was also a place that held a dark secret, a secret that had haunted Elijah since he was a young boy. The farm had always been a place of solitude, far removed from the hustle and bustle of the nearby town. Its sprawling fields stretched as far as the eye could see, with rows upon rows of crops that swayed in the gentle breeze. But there was one field, a field that had been left untouched for as long as Elijah could remember, a field that held a darkness that had plagued his family for generations. It was on this bleak autumn evening that Eliah, his aging frame stupid and his hands weathered by years of labor, found himself standing at the edge of that dreaded field. The setting sun cast long shadows, and the cornstalk stood tall and foreboding. As he stared at the field, memories of his childhood flooded back, of whispers in the night, of strange occurrences that had sent shivers down his spine. The stories he had heard from his grandparents, tales of a malevolent force that dwelled within the field, had haunted him all his life. Elijah had spent his youth avoiding that field, knowing that to enter it was to invite darkness that could consume a man's soul. But as he grew older and his body weakened, he couldn't escape the feeling that he needed to confront the secrets that lay hidden within. With trembling hands, he stepped into the field, the dry leaves crunching beneath his feet. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie pallor over the land. The air grew thick with an oppressive stillness, and a sense of unease settled in his chest. Elijah moved deeper into the field, the tall cornstalks closing in around him. Shadows danced among the rows, and he felt as though he were being watched, as though unseen eyes followed his every move. As he walked, the whispers began, a soft, haunting murmur that seemed to come from all directions at once. It was as if the very land itself were speaking to him, a chorus of voices filled with sorrow and despair. He pressed on, his heart pounding in his chest until he reached the center of the field. There, he saw it, a weathered ancient stone, covered in moss and etched with strange symbols. It was a marker of a pact that his ancestors had made long ago, a pact with a malevolent force that had promised prosperity in exchange for a terrible price. Elijah's hands shook as he reached out to touch the stone, his fingers tracing the symbols that had been carved into its surface. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and he felt a presence, a malevolent force, closing in around him. Suddenly, the ground beneath him gave way, and he tumbled into a hidden pit, his body crashing against the cold, damp earth. As he lay there, dazed and disoriented, he realized the truth. The field was not just a place of darkness, but a trap that had ensnared him just as it had ensnared his ancestors. As he struggled to his feet, he heard a soft, sinister laughter echoing in the darkness. It was a laughter that sent chills down his spine, a laughter that belonged to something, not of this world. Elijah knew that he had to escape, that he had to break the curse that had plagued his family for generations. With every ounce of strength left in his frail body, he climbed out of the pit and stumbled back toward the edge of the field. But just as he reached the safety of solid ground, he felt a cold, gnarled hand close around his ankle, pulling him back into the field. He fought with all his might, but the grip was unrelenting, and he was dragged deeper into the darkness. As he was pulled beneath the surface, the whispers grew louder, their voices filled with anguish and torment. He realized then that the curse was not just a malevolent force, but the trapped souls of his ancestors, condemned to suffer for eternity. And as he descended into the abyss, he heard one final chilling revelation, the unexpected twist that had eluded him all his life. The curse could only be broken when a member of the Monroe family willingly sacrificed themselves to the field, offering their soul to the darkness in exchange for the release of the others. Elijah Monroe, the old man who had spent a lifetime running from the secrets of the farm, had unwittingly become the key to their salvation. He had been chosen to make the ultimate sacrifice, to free his ancestors from their torment, and to finally break the curse that had haunted the Monroe Farm for generations.